All right, today I want to tell you about something I saw. I'm sure you've all seen this and probably derived humor from it, as I have. I saw a lady in a mask today. Now, seeing somebody in a mask is not so strange, but it's the location where I saw this person, and it wasn't even in fact the fact she was wearing it correctly, which is kind of a statistical oddity. I mean, if you see somebody wearing a mask, they're wearing it here, they're under the when most of the people with a mask, they might as well not have one. And I point that out to them. Like I went to Starbucks the other day with my wife and pointed out to all people, I was like, you might as well just take them off because you're not using them correctly. I do feel it's like my personal responsibility to the world around me to point out that they're using their masks incorrectly. But she was wearing her mask correctly. That wasn't the problem. The problem, or not really a problem, but at least what I found amusing, entertaining, was here it is. It's a rainy day. I had some errands to go and do. So one of the places I had to go to was the bank. So I'm sitting in the drive-thru since all the lobbies are closed, of course, and she's sitting in her car in the little the lane next to me. She's sitting in her car wearing a mask. No, it wasn't like it was around her neck because she'd taken it off because she'd been somewhere else. You know, that would have been reasonable. She was wearing it correctly in her car with the windows rolled up, and she does the thing, and then she rolls down the window and puts it in the canister. I'd go and chat with whoever the banker is about what she... I'm thinking, this lady has to know that she can't get coronavirus through an intercom. She has to know that she can't give it to herself because she's either already got it or she doesn't have it to give to herself. I'm not sure what the mask is accomplishing. I want to talk to you about hedge rules today. Hedge rules are when we make a law or a rule that is designed to prevent something worse from happening. So, for example, this is a kind of a strange one in American history. A famous hedge rule, or not really a hedge rule, but this was a hedge argument against doing something. In the years after the Civil War, here's the black populace has been emancipated and they're citizens now, and the question came up of to what degree are they citizens? What freedoms do they have? Because we didn't just say, hey, you're equal now. You know, just humanity had a hard time accepting this. So they didn't have the right to vote right away. And so the question comes up, can they vote? Well, and so one person argued, I don't know who the person was, but his argument was, if we give them the right to vote, then we are probably going to have to give women the right to vote. Now think about that for a moment. Here's a man who obviously at some point in time in his past and probably into the present did not consider black people to be equal with white people. That was, I'm sure, his opinion. But even more distasteful than that, here's a man that thought probably that black people were 60% of humans, as some people argued back then. But women voting was actually more distasteful to him than a black person, a non-human being, voting. That's incredible. This is the idea of a hedge rule, where we take something that this invisible evil to us, that's so distasteful, and we're going to back it up and we're going to prevent things here. We're going to cut it off here because I really don't want this thing from happening. And Colossians talks about that. He says you make rules that are really, they're just man-made opinions and things. They're not really God's rules. Do not taste, do not touch, do not handle. Things that all, have to do with things, that are just physical. And the rules themselves don't prevent any immorality. The rules themselves aren't, there's no invisible evil that you're actually preventing, but It's like that mask in the car. You think you're doing something, but there's no virus in your car to get. Otherwise, you already got it. There's no virus coming through the microphone. You're not really preventing anything with your hedge rule or anything. So, and there's another a biblical illustration of this. You say, well, is it really bad? Well, it's not bad, I guess, to have a hedge. You can wear a mask in your car if you want, and you can have a hedge rule for yourself if you want. You can set up all sorts of hedges and say, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to go here. I'm not going to do this because, I'm not going to go to Applebee's because I don't like the fact that they serve alcohol. Okay. There's lots of things that you can set arbitrary hedge rules on, and they're fine for you. If you don't want to go to Applebee's, no one's going to, kill you for not going to Applebee's. Whatever the hedge rule is that you set up. Here's where the problem comes in with hedge rules, is that we think they have value and they don't. And that can eventually get other people into trouble. And in the case of hedge rules, the best example of one is at the very beginning. We find, kind of through a little bit of deduction, that a hedge rule has been established in the garden. And God has given, in this story, God has given Adam some rules. And we look at when God gives the rules in Genesis chapter 2, Eve is not around yet. Which leads us into chapter 3, and here Satan approaches the woman, doesn't approach Adam. And we learn something about what Adam did by what Eve says. Now remember, Eve wasn't there when the rules were stated, so there's only one way for her to learn the rules, and that's if Adam had told her, which is fine. But we listen to what the devil says to Eve, and we look at her response, and we find out she's under an incorrect impression. So he says, "This is wonderful," and she's looking at how great this is. But she says to Satan, "God has said to us that we're not to eat it, and in fact, we're not even supposed to touch it." Wrong. You go back to chapter 2, and God said never. God never said not to touch it, ever. And that was a hedge rule. And don't look at it, don't touch it. He set up that type of a hedge rule. Adam kind of took it a step further. Listen, I don't want my wife. I don't trust these women, right? Can't trust women. So he set up a hedge rule to keep his wife from doing the wrong thing. The hedge rule was incorrect. And so because she placed her confidence in the hedge rule, and Satan then exploited that hedge rule to show, hey, nothing's bad is going to happen if you just touch it. Well, now having exposed the bad logic, the hedge rule becomes dangerous because it's inaccurate. And so many people have built their lives around the hedge rules instead of around the morality that God wants, and we trust in the hedge rule, which it's fine for yourself if you understand, listen, I know that this thing isn't wrong. There's things that I don't think are necessarily wrong to do that I won't do, but I understand them not from the perspective of keeping a hedge that I think is God's rule, but I just keep it for me because I feel safer, which is fine. But I never, and I make this a principle especially as a preacher, not to preach that hedge rule because I don't have that authority. Because if I do that, I put other people in a position where they trust the hedge rule. If God wanted a rule to protect people from something, he would have given it. And he didn't establish those hedge rules. So it's important. So as you go through your life, and think about the things that you want to tell other people to do or not do, especially don't do this, and you warn them, don't do this, this is bad, we shouldn't do this, And we love telling everybody what they shouldn't do. It's just our nature as humans. As you do them, remember the lady in the mask in her car, not protecting herself from anything, thinking she's so wonderfully safe when she's not doing anything. And ask yourself if that's really what you're promoting to other people, to drive around in their cars with a mask on, protecting themselves from nothing.